It's the third episode of the Demo Guys podcast. Welcome, everybody. Joined by Jason Smith, the Director of Retail Activation for Ithaca Hummus. I am Sam Kaplan, the founding CEO of Brand Ambassador Consultants. Got a great show for everybody this week. Really looking forward to it. Jason and I are going to have a special announcement here in a couple minutes. Also, many of you read the teases on LinkedIn. Kraft-Heinz looking to get into the merger and acquisition game, trying to address maybe some issues and concerns they have with a lack of sales growth. So Jason and I, we decided we're going to do the first ever CPG brand mock draft today. We're going to play the role of a Kraft-Heinz merger and acquisitions executive, and we're going to make our picks. We're going to draft the best brands in the better for you category that we think will be the best fit for Kraft-Heinz, should they indeed follow through with their threats of going into acquisition mode. So stay tuned for that one. Looking forward to that segment. Did a lot of research on that, Jason, last couple of days. I've got a pretty good cheat sheet here. Hoping you don't take my picks, man. I'm pretty excited for some of these picks coming up. But how was your week last week? Pretty quiet week for you, I guess. This is like the 1 week you don't have to. It was 1 week last week where you didn't have to do the Costco roadshows there.
No, it was nice having the holiday weekend to kind of lay it back and just show gratefulness. Obviously, being a veteran and being part of the Persian Gulf War, it's not my favorite weekend of the year, but it's also a weekend that I think we all need to just step back and say to ourselves, just be grateful to be here. I've been in a lot of countries and, United States is pretty great. So, but yeah, it was a pretty quiet week. I traveled up to Stop and Shop's headquarters and we had a great vendor event on Tuesday of last week, which was killer. I saw some good friends there. The incredible support of Stop and Shop with emerging better for you brands is something that I need to call out on this. If you're not trying to work with Stop and Shop and you have a brand that is a better for you brand, this is a banner that maybe 10 years ago I wouldn't even touch with better for you, and in 10 years they've totally wrapped their heads around what where people are going and the health initiatives and where the future of food is going, and Stop and Shop's making huge moves. So grateful for their partnership. It's incredible to have someone like that invite you there in the first place, but also to support us like they did. And other than that, it's a pretty quiet week. Just gearing up. I got 2 back-to-back road shows. I'm headed to Chicago right after this on a plane, and then I head out to Ann Arbor the following weekend. Wish me luck.
Which Chicago Costco are you going to be at this weekend?
Glenview, which is right up there in the Northwest area. So I actually was born in Hinsdale, so I know the area kind of well, but spent most of my life in Denver. So it's just I built Perfect Bar in Chicago. Mariano's, Fruitful Yield, you name it, Jewel. I know the territory well enough to be dangerous. So,
and then Stop and Shop, of course, under the Ahold banner. And Jason, I know when we were talking off air, you had mentioned an interaction that you had last week with 2 founders that had asked for your counsel, and they maybe gotten some bad advice from another party, and we're about to make a big mistake, if I recall you mentioned.
Yeah, I hear this a lot. There's a lot of people out there that are consulting brands that come from distributors, or they come from some of the bigger brands in CPG that we all know, like your Pepsis, things like that. Knowledge is great on the level of, hey, I know how to run a trade program and AOP, things like that. That's great. That's great knowledge to have if you're in a brand that's already, emerged and has some growth already and isn't really in the need of really scrappy thought process and how to build. But I was talking to a couple of founders, and I talked to a lot of founders just because I love to try to shed some light on like what's worked for me and the 3 brands that I've helped scale. And what I was hearing that they were being told and being charged $150 an hour to be told this information, which just blew my mind, was like, hey, you need to go for KeHE. So first and foremost, I just want to say these are brands with zero to very little distribution yet in CPG retail, like very little, they don't have money. They're literally making it in their kitchens type products. These are not like mass produced. These aren't like using a co-packer. I have a couple consultants charging between $125 to $175 an hour, telling them you need to go approach KeHE and go for Sprouts. And I'm just like, Okay, so just to go backwards a little bit in my career, I worked for Tree of Life before as KE, and I opened the first Sprouts of one of two first Sprouts in Colorado as a vitamin manager. I was in the Sprouts 301 in Parker, Colorado. Westminster was number 2. They were the first 2 stores in Colorado. I know the banner well. I opened the Sunflower and Highlands Ranch before it, and then I was hired to open Sprouts. So I have a really good relationship and a long-standing relationship as a Sprouty, but I also know him from Boney's and Henry's from back in the day in California. If you don't know that history, do your history research. You'll learn a lot about Sprouts strategy and how they intend to grow. And I need you to realize that as an emerging brand, your strategy needs to be driven towards infra and NCG first, and Whole Foods and natural grocers and some of these other banners. And it's nothing against Sprouts. It's nothing at all. But Sprouts is tough to make it in when you're new, very new. First of all, they don't usually put you in the planogram to give you a chance. They usually put you in these inner aisles, which are fresh finds. A lot of people go to Sprouts to shop produce prices. They don't really go there for premium items. You have to realize that. For an emerging brand trying to get trial and awareness, you can work with Sprouts, but it's a lot easier to go into some of these major retailers that attract that premium dollar customer, which is Whole Foods first and foremost. And I hate to get too like chatty here on here or anything like that, because I don't want to. I
think this is why people tune in.
I'm not trying to talk negative about Sprouts, but telling an emerging brand that's just now getting GS1 codes on their product, right? Like they're just brand new, to go for Sprouts out the gate is not a smart move, especially when they can't really control. What if Sprouts says, okay, we're going to put you in all our stores? And this is a brand without any awareness. How are they going to grow? How are they going to support that in the first place? Do they even have the production? I didn't see it. So I just want to say, like, all of you people out there in CPG that are giving advice to these emerging brands, please, emerging brands, if you're taking advice from these people, ask them, how did they build their first brand? And if they can't tell you how they built their first brand, stop the conversation. Because at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot more than just reaching out to Sprouts and hoping that you get in all their stores and think that you've made it in CPG. Because a point of distribution is a liability until you have velocities, and that's the key to the game.
And, as a follow up to what you just mentioned there, I interact with a lot of startup emerging brands, and they have the mindset that the only real distribution options for them are KE or UNFI. What are your thoughts about some, for lack of a better term, I would call them maybe boutique distributors like Pod Foods, Rainforest in the Northeast? What are your thoughts on those options?
No, they're great options. Even a Rainforest, though, for like some of these emerging brands I'm talking to, like Rainforest, like Jimmy and that team is incredible, but they're going to expect some turns, right? And it's a lot of their business is New York City, and New York City is full of bodegas and all kinds of things that you can sell into, but getting a reorder on the product is tough. And one of the 2 brands that it's funny.
Want that free fill. They'll take that free fill, but you'll never see the reorder.
Well, I mean, and one of those brands that was consulted by this person that got them with a distributor in New York, I'd never even heard of, but they wanted their product cost them $3 to manufacture. They sold it to them for $1.50 a pack to get distribution in New York City. And I immediately said, you just should not do that deal, because they're going to free fill every dang store they possibly can. And the chances of you getting any orders or resale on these items are pretty slim. And they didn't like that answer, but I'm telling you right now, this is what you need to do. In my opinion, you need to work with retailers that will support your business. And when I say that, a retailer that supports your business is a retailer that will let you come in and do demos and support your product and support those PODs that they have in your store, so you can start building velocities in those PODs. And you need to start small, because you need to understand what your sell-through and velocities are going to be and your production before you start ramping up and going into all these retailers. Because at the end of the day, if you can't keep up production and you tell this retailer, oh yeah, we're ready for you, and they say yes, it's game time. And trying to go find the co-packers and all these things last minute is tough, and quality of product goes real fast and your supply goes real fast. So you need to be ahead of the game. What I always suggest doing, find a small regional distributor, find a account now, an account that makes you famous, that you can do DSD into, that lets you demo, is the perfect scenario for a small brand, whether it's Harmon's in Utah, whether it's Natural Grocers in Colorado, whether it's ShopRite, Wakefern in the Northeast, which is amazing to work with. If you haven't figured that out, please look into this banner. They're incredible for emerging better for you brands. And start just working with your smaller regional distributors, because their expectations of your turns aren't going to be as high. They're most likely emerging themselves and trying to grow their business. If you can grow with a DSD, you're going to eat some margin. But at the end of the day, you're controlling your shelf. They're going to go pack it out. They're going to make sure the shelf is full. Your inventory is a lot easier to control with a DSD distributor. They're not placing massive pallet orders all the time. They have a conscience of, I only have so much warehouse space myself, so I don't want to overload. Even if I give you an OI or anything like that, I'm not going to take advantage of it. And you can learn really quick from a DSD distributor kind of how the bigger distributors are going to start to work. Because when you start to work with a big distributor, and trust me, I've worked with KeHE and Unify my whole career, and I've worked on the level of with the SRM relationship, everything else. Their expectations are high. Their costs are really high. So you have to be ready for that. And honestly, working with a small distributor, that margin might seem like a little bit more to eat at first, but it's well worth your dollars when you can control your own distribution. You can go out and sample your product. You can make sure those reorders are placed that day of. It's just a communication, and it's a team effort, but it works really well. So.
Well, incredible insight from Jason there. Free advice from Jason, type of advice that I guess some people are trying to charge 125, 150 an hour for, that is nowhere near as good. But along those lines of insight and advice that you get from the Demo Guys podcast, that leads into our special announcement. This was a idea curated by Jason last week when we were talking about potential ideas for the future. And I'm proud to announce, pleased to announce that we're going to do a special 1-hour primetime edition of the Demo Guys podcast, Wednesday, June 11th at 7 p.m. It's going to be at least an hour long. And we're going to dedicate it to the topic of how to build a robust demo program. Jason's been building programs for years with various brands. I've worked on the brand side for quite a few years as well. Now on the agency side, we're going to give you basically the type of webinar/podcast that some people would charge you for. We're going to give it away for free. We're going to give away the insight and info for free. We're going to tell you all of the do's and don'ts of how to build an internal, robust demo program and things to look for maybe from an external partner as well. We're going to do some Q&A. We don't always have time to do a lot of interactivity on this podcast, but that's going to change for the 11th. We will take live questions from viewers, maybe even bring in a couple guests, who knows, but it's going to be a really fun, interesting show, Wednesday, June 11th, 7 p.m. You'll be able to access it the same way you're accessing this podcast right now. It'll be on LinkedIn Live. We'll record it. We'll put it out on archived version, but it will be airing live June 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn Live. So looking forward to that, Jason.
I am too, Sam. Honestly, I can't wait for that. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And I think it's going to be very insightful for people. So I hope we get some listeners tuning in to really want to learn how emerging brands scale a demo program. It's fascinating in its own state, just how much goes into demos. Like you'd think, oh yeah, you just hire someone to do demos and it just happens, and it's just not the reality. So I'm looking forward to it, Sam. So.
And as promised, we're going to move along here to the Kraft-Heinz merger and acquisitions mock draft. Many of you saw the headlines that came out last week. Kraft-Heinz, publicly acknowledging that their sales have flatlined a little bit, and they're going to look for some new acquisitions potentially as a way to kickstart sales growth. So this is a segment that got a lot of great feedback when we announced it last week. So I'm excited. I put it, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I did a lot of research on this. So I'm excited, but we're going to do it mock draft style, the same way you would see an NFL mock draft on ESPN. But I'm going to turn it over to Jason with the first pick. And Jason, you're on the clock.
Well, I'm a velocity guy, so I always go for beverage first and foremost because I know the velocities in beverage are pretty rad. So I'm going to rock this, and we're probably going to call this out again on this show. But we're going to call out Wild Wonder because this brand is secretly and quietly really building a lot of distribution and a lot of velocities, and their product is special. It's great for digestion. It's very different than anything else on the market taste-wise, in my opinion. Their new one, their cherry lemonades, become my second favorite, but I highly recommend the guava rose, but love that brand. So let's go.
Good pick there, but I'm gonna go here, and I'm kind of excited that I got this. I thought you might steal this from me. This is Carbone. If you guys aren't familiar with it, and full disclosure, Carbone is a client of Brand Ambassador Consultants, but I think if you follow the industry closely, you're not going to question the validity of that pick. Carbone has been named by many publications as one of the top insurgent brands out there. And, if Kraft-Heinz is looking for sales, existing sales that they can just absorb into their program, you're looking at Carbone, 100% year-over-year growth the last couple of years, one of the hottest brands out there. I am half Italian. I grew up in a half Italian family. My mother's side is full Italian. We are very picky and serious about pasta sauce. Carbone, from my perspective, and some people might say I'm biased, I felt this way before I started working with them. It is the best sauce you can buy at a store, made with good ingredients, tomatoes imported from Italy. They're using olive oil in the vast majority of their sauces. And it's it would be a natural extension for Kraft-Heinz. They already have Classico in their portfolio. It's not uncommon for a company as big as Kraft-Heinz to have two versions of the same product in their portfolio. You look at Campbell's, they had Prego, they acquired Rayo's a couple years ago. You look at Kraft-Heinz, they have Classico. Classico's sales, though, are flatlining. They're sagging. They're not very good. I don't think Classico is a very good sauce product. I think it's ketchup, basically. So, it would be an opportunity for Kraft-Heinz to acquire a product that has true street credibility when it comes to culinary. Carbone is a sauce that chefs use. It's a chef-created sauce that's approved by other chefs. So I just think it would be a natural extension for them. I'm not sure if Carbone's even looking for an acquisition. Personally, I hope they don't get acquired. As a consumer, I don't want anyone to mess with the recipe. I think Rayo's has changed a little bit after the Campbell's acquisition. But I think, you look at the Carbone sauce, I think that it is won over a lot of younger people, a lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Zers. And, if it were to be acquired, what I would recommend to Kraft-Heinz, don't mess with the recipe. Don't mess with the price point. Keep it as a premium item. If you want to improve the margin, do that through production and distribution. If you want to change, affordability of any product, drop Classico. Keep that, drop the Classico price, make that even more affordable for consumers, but keep Carbone as a high-end premium brand. Do not cut the price. Do not cut the ingredients. Improve the margins in other ways. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you for your next pick.
Can we just start with please don't do that to any brands that you acquire and just let them thrive on their own, because when you guys start playing with brands, it starts to go south. And I know because I've been part of acquisitions, and I'm pretty heart hurt in some places for some of the brands I've worked with to where they are today. So my next lineup, you definitely an emerging brand, definitely kind of a category disruptor, and that's Mush. And now most of us know Mush as, they're overnight oats. They're in a cup, they're very, very popular. I've seen them have distribution a lot. This is a new bar they started making or putting out in the distribution. I think it's probably been out there for about 6 months. Organic rolled oats, almonds, milk protein concentrate, honey, coconut oil, maple sugar, vanilla extract, salt, cinnamon. That's it. Love it. Great ingredients.
And I like that pick because it's, to just for Kraft-Heinz to get into the bar game, not necessarily a natural extension. However, they do have a big dairy frozen, refrigerated dairy presence. You look at Mush, the overnight oats, refrigerated product in the dairy section. The Mush bars, refrigerated product in that same set. So it's a little bit of a expansion for them, but not a huge leap. So I like that pick a lot. My next pick, I think this is very much a very natural extension, especially when you look at the Heinz aspect of Kraft-Heinz. When you get to the condiments, Cleveland Kitchen. I think that has been an amazing brand, really reinvented the probiotic sauerkraut game. I remember, about 8 years ago, the probiotic sauerkraut category was for like hardcore hippies. There was Bubbies, and you would go to smaller stores. But I feel like Cleveland Kitchen really mainstreamed it with the packaging, with the flavors, and they've been doing incredibly well. They just raised, it was announced last week, another $2.9 million in funding. The sales there are there, even though some people might consider, probiotic sauerkraut's niche. It's the sales are there. They've expanded into kimchi. They've expanded into pickles. So their product line is pretty vast now. They're in 14,000 doors. They did 41 million in sales last year in 2024, easily projected to go over 50 million. So I think there's good sales there right now, but with Kraft-Heinz involved, if they acquired Cleveland Kitchen and really put their full muscle behind it, I think it could be a mega brand. And it's interesting to note, I remember working with the Cleveland Kitchen guys, I think about 7-8 years ago. They actually have some ties to Kraft-Heinz. Kraft-Heinz had an incubator program. That was a springboard. They called it a springboard incubator program, and Cleveland Kitchen was a part of that in 2018, back when it was Cleveland Kraft.
Yeah, that's a great pick, honestly, Sam. It's hard to follow that up. I mean, that's really good. And honestly, I have a lot of friends at Cleveland Kitchen. It's a great brand. I get their pickles all the time. I love that brand. So great call out, great pairing. I'm more of like an identity crisis for and I don't buy nutrition bars that aren't sold in the fridge usually. So this isn't really a nutrition bar. This is a brand that's been around and underneath the radar for as long as I can remember. They were a brand I kind of competed with at one time. Honey Mama's is literally, I can't not eat the whole thing right when I couldn't have this in my house and not eat it last night, or else I wouldn't. But these are their no protein line, 8 grams of protein. The macros are pretty clean, 170 grams, 170 calories for the whole thing, very low sugar. Ingredients obviously are phenomenal, but if you ever bite into a Honey Mama's, it's a completely different experience from anything else I've bought in retail. It's a brand that I would throw on "you need to do demos today" type as well, because honestly, all they need to do is get people to taste these things, and they're just going to fly off the shelf. They're delicious and they're good for you. Like, you got it figured out. So there's my 3. So
and Kraft-Heinz already in that set, the refrigerated dairy set. That is where you find Honey Mama's. And I think I would love to see maybe Kraft-Heinz get behind a Honey Mama's and create a kid-friendly version, because Kraft-Heinz, one of their biggest cash cows is Lunchables. Jason, you and I believe we talked about Lunchables off the air. I think we talked about it during episode 1. Really not a product you should be giving your kids. It's the ingredient list there, not great. But, if they acquired a product like, Honey Mama's or the Mush Bars, come out with a kid version of that. And that's something that Kraft-Heinz could promote to kids that they could feel good about with those ingredients. So my final pick here, it's more of a category and not necessarily brand specific, but the meat snacks category is now a $10 billion category with the potential to grow even further. I think women now are embracing, protein in their diets more than ever. And I think that has fueled growth of the meat snacks category and shows the potential for even more growth. So I'm going to recommend, and, Jason, I believe you have some friends there. If I was in Kraft-Heinz, I would look at acquiring either Chomps or Righteous Felon. Both have made tremendous inroads, in the meat snacks category. According to Forbes, Chomps did close to 500 million last year in sales. Considering where Chomps came from, just a small independent brand with 2 founders that put their own money into it. They leveraged themselves to get Chomps off the ground, and to be where they are today with, a reported $500 million in sales last year, according to Forbes.com. That's just incredible. Over 20,000 doors as well. You look at the ACV, you look at the market penetration, you look at the retailers that they're in, Costco, Walmart, Whole Foods, even Trader Joe's. Tons of brands would love to be in Trader Joe's. It's not even a possibility for them. Chomps is there. So that would be, an option that I would look at if I was Kraft-Heinz to get into that category any way possible. If not Chomps, Righteous Felon, local guys that we both know. I think that's another tremendous brand. They've made tremendous inroads the last couple of years, especially at Costco. So those are my top 3 picks there. But I think all 3 that I mentioned there would be tremendous acquisition targets for Kraft-Heinz.
I'm shocked you didn't drop the new Primal into that category, because to me, like, what Jason's done with that brand is amazing. Like, I've watched him, and that Snack Mates product, honestly, I love it myself. It's such a fun snack. So but they're right there in there with, and I agree. Shout out to the Chomps team, Elizabeth Carter, Matthew Green, Justin South, Allie Jennings, all the friends, Matt Landon, everyone I worked with at Perfect. It's awesome to see you guys continue to crush it in retail and everywhere else you go. So way to go, guys.
Now, I thought you might snake a couple of my picks, so I added some. I went deep. Were there any Were there any brands in there that didn't make the official 3-round mock draft? Your undrafted free agents that you might want to mention here.
It's so funny because I was trying to hold back when you're speaking about Carbone, but Saz is on the market right now, and Benjamin, my boy out there in New York City, is one of the hardest workers I know, so he's going to get that brand right there with Carbones. I feel like that's a great product. It's great taste. I live with an Italian family. My wife's Italian. She loves both brands, so I'm not going to say anything negative. That's another one I definitely put on that list if it was number 4 or 5. So.
And 3 more that I'm going to rattle off here. IQ Bar, good culture based on sales growth and the fact that, that's a section where Kraft-Heinz already lives in the grocery store. And then, you look at Heinz, just a legacy brand when it comes to condiments, sauces. What about Kinder's Barbecue? I buy their products all the time at Costco. The sauces, the spices, they're just exceptional. I think that's a brand that I've seen gain a lot of market share the last couple of years. So there's a 3 in there. And one thing I want to mention, if you and I did a general not a Kraft-Heinz specific, just a general draft for brands that corporations should look to acquire, I think Olapop would probably be at the top of our list. But the reason why I didn't mention Olapop, and Jason, this, the beverage game is different. It's a whole different category. It's like comparing baseball to football. It's not offense versus defense. It's a different sport, and it requires a massive investment. And Kraft-Heinz, I do not believe they have very many, if any, interests in the beverage game. And it's a different form of distribution, different form of production. But if we were going to do a general show, Olapop would have to be right there.
Well, if you picked 3 and I only got 1, I'm going to mention 2 others really quick. And that's Yaza Lebna. Yaza, go find Yaza. It's such a great product. You want your macros, you want a great tasting product. They're built to scale. They're a category disruptor. There's nothing like it in the category. And also, I think Oat House has got a future. They're in the nut butter, but not butter. It's made out of granola. They've cleaned up the ingredients again. It's a really high quality product. Tastes great. And if you want something allergen friendly to send your kids to school with, it's basically the best option in the set. So, so 2 other great brands.
And I did consider putting Ithaca on the list, but I didn't want to get you in any trouble. I'm not sure.
Honestly, it's not even worth listening to that anymore. We're just going to do it.
I'm not hoping these brands get acquired. I don't even know. We don't know if any of these brands are looking to get acquired. I hope they all keep growing and become, independent juggernauts. But, I think in the interest of some of the news that's out there that came out last week, we wanted to take on this unique approach, this unique topic. But we are almost out of time. We are not going to do brands that we would like to see demo. We're just going to go skip ahead here to our product review. Jason drafted Wild Wonder very early in the game. I have tried their other varieties, but I have not yet tried the cherry lemonade. We wanted to do this product review last week. I went to Wegmans to grab it. I couldn't. It was sold out. Thankfully, it's back in. So, Jason, I'm going to crack this open.
Do it.
Here we go. Got the sound right on mic.
Cheers. So good.
Oh, wow. Exceptional. Exceptional.
No weird aftertaste, just a nice clean finish. Gosh, man, Wild Wonder, you got this going. Love it.
8% juice, just 6 grams of total sugar. It tastes incredible. So another, I think this is my favorite Wild Wonder. It's live probiotics. You're looking at 1 billion organisms. So that's legit probiotic value there. So
yeah, similar to Olipop, this is actually a really good beverage to drink for digestion alone. But if it tastes great and it's good for you, and it's completely differentiated from Olipop, you know, I know Olipop started making the skinnier cans for C-Store and things like that. It was great, smart play. Abby's always killing it there, just like with Health Aid. But you know, this one's unique in it. This is how they manufacture from day one. I love the sleekness, the recyclability of it. Everything Wild Wonder's doing is very smart. Ingredients are great, low sugar, on trend, great for digestion. Way to go, Wild Wonder. Keep going.
And with that brings us to the end of the show. Jason's got a flight to catch. I've got some work to do, but we want to thank everyone for tuning in to this week's episode. You can catch us next Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. on LinkedIn Live, and you can always catch us on demand at the Brand Ambassador Consultants YouTube channel. The address is right there on screen. But until next week, this has been the Demo Guys Podcast.
Thanks, guys.